With the new expansion Showdown in the Badlands coming out, I figured I would do a top 10 list. I feel like I haven't done one of these in a while. I used to do them all the time, but this expansion is considered a lower power level expansion by a lot of people, including me. But I do feel like there is a lot of very powerful cards, and especially after doing the theory crafting event, it made me kind of appreciate how good cards are going to be. Starting off with Greedy Partner, 2 mana 2/3 battlecry. If you're holding another 2-cost card, get a coin. This card is going to be, I think, fundamental in Rogue. I feel like if you're going to play Rogue, this is a card you genuinely consider every single time, especially because A, there's Shadowstep, B, we'll see another card that works really well with this later in this video. This is just good. Miracle Rogue also really likes coins. Cards like Draka or the Sinstone Graveyard that's been around forever really like this card. It's also neutral. So if you are playing a deck that does want another coin, or gets a coin in general, I guess, and summons a 2/3, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think in Arena, it'll actually be an okay card too. Speaking of why coins will be good, Wishing Well. Wishing Well is a pretty great card from the theory crafting event. The only thing that's a little bit questionable about Wishing Well is if a random legendary minion is gonna be good enough in a 6-set expansion meta. I'm not 100% sure about that. What I did see in the theory crafting event is that I was probably losing games on turn 5 because you'd play Wishing Well, you would have coins already set up, you go coin, play a couple legendaries, and the amount of tempo that you get is rather absurd. It just kind of depended on what legendaries you get. The thing is, if you summon a bunch of random legendaries and your opponent has to react to those legendaries, that means the Wishing Well stays alive. And therefore, if you have additional coins, you just get more legendaries, or you just held legendaries back in your hand because it was enough of a threat and you didn't really have to worry about it. I'm a little worried for Wishing Well when rotation happens, because genuinely at rotation, the average legendary does get better because there's less bad legendaries in the pool. At a 6-set expansion, I'm not 100% sure, but I do feel like this is going to be one of the most tilting cards to play against. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, Rogue's also getting Drilly the Kid, and if Excavate Rogue ends up being a pretty powerful deck because of the Azurite Scorpion, or just in general Rogue just doing Rogue things, this is a very, very good card. Again, Shadowstep is a card that we have to consider with every Rogue card, so just Shadowstepping this gives you 2 more Excavates, which I think is very strong. But just on itself, if you end up top decking this on turn 3, or turn 4, sorry, you legitimately get 3 Excavates. That's kind of insane. Worst case scenario, you're only getting 2 and you get a 4/3, and it's a mech, so you could just fit this into the mech Rogue deck. I legitimately think that Drilly the Kid is going to be one of the best legendaries in this set, and at a 4 expansion rotation metagame, this card only gets better. Excavating Treasures also seem like they're pretty great, and Rogue just Rogue's Rogue, so I'm pretty optimistic on this card. Messenger Buzzard is a card that I legitimately think is almost too good, because this is the card that you don't really want to play Highlander Hunter for. Highlander Hunter, as far as I'm concerned, was an okay deck in the theory crafting event. It seemed fine. I think it was the worst one though. So unless you're really interested in playing Highlander Hunter, I don't really know if you want to go for it. But why would you? Because you could put 2 Messenger Buzzards into your deck, and this card draws a beast and hand buffs your whole hand for 2 mana, and it's a beast itself. Bro, absolutely nutty card. Hunter, unless you're playing like super aggro, I think this card's insane. And the fact that it buffs every minion and not just beasts means that on average, this card is just very good. Unless you really want to play Highlander, I think this card goes into almost every Hunter deck that you're playing. I think it's a pretty good card. It's also draw for Hunter. Hunter severely lacks that sometimes. Blind Eye Sharpshooter, 3 mana 1/5. After you play a Naga, deal 2 damage to a random enemy and draw a spell, then switch. This card, I died to turn 4 and 5, I think, during the 3 crafting events. I feel like aggro Naga Demon Hunter, I should say, will be a very, very good scary deck that will keep a lot of these greedy Highlander decks in check. This card is going to be one of the fundamental reasons for it. It's just, dude, you deal random damage, you draw spells. Demon Hunter has a lot of ways of playing 0 mana cards. I am hopeful that this card's not going to be the most obnoxious thing to play against, but listen, I am not a Demon Hunter fan, as probably a lot of you know, and this card's going to piss me off. It just seemed really good. It's also a really annoying minion to deal with. A 3 mana 1/5 is very awkward for a lot of classes to deal with, and it also helps you a ton. It can be a little frustrating on your side because it's a random enemy minion, but or sorry, not enemy minion, just random enemy. So sometimes you're gonna need to clear the board and it only hits face. Sometimes it's only gonna hit your minions you need to hit face. But regardless, I think on average, this is a pretty great card. Demon Hunter is gonna be killing you pretty fast, I think. All right, I think it's Hi-Ho, but it could be He-Ho, I don't know. Silverwing, 2 mana, 2/1 Divine Shield, Death Rattle, draw a holy spell, and it's a dragon for Paladin. This is one of the best 2-drops, if not the best 2-drop I've ever seen in Hearthstone from all the time I have played it. It is 2 mana, 2/1 Divine Shield, which is arguably a pretty good stat line. Most of the time, this is going to 2-for-1, but if it doesn't 2-for-1, it's also a dragon consideration for if you ever play Dragon Paladin, but it replaces itself and draws a holy spell. Dude, I think this is like just, it's just very loaded. Like, I don't know what else to say. I feel like this one's going to go a little bit under the radar for a lot of people because it's not like the most flashy card ever, but if you played during the days of like shielded minibot back all the way from GVG, this is almost the same idea, except for it draws you a spell. And Paladin just likes to, you know, play Divine Shield minions. It goes into pure Paladin. I don't know. I'm nervous for this card, dude. I think it's very good. I don't think it's going to be like one of these outstanding cards where you look at it and go like, holy crap, that card's like whatever. But get ready to see this quite a bit. If Paladin's good, this is going to be one of the reasons for it. Also really good on the Highlander deck. All right, Dragon Golem, 7 mana, 3/4 taunt, battlecry summon a copy of this for each dragon in your hand. For Druid, it's also a dragon itself. This card is basically Spreading Plague, except for dragons. It is 1 mana more expensive, but it is a pretty great way of developing some kind of board response to your opponents and lets you kind of do your own thing after, because it could be a lot of stats, right? There are so many different ways that Druid has to get dragons in their hand, ton of draw, ton of generation. So Dragon Golem at some point will be one of the most frustrating cards in the metagame. I just see Spreading Plague in this card. Now, the one benefit of this card versus Spreading Plague, even though it is 1 mana more, is that you could develop a board with this card without your opponent having a board itself. Spreading Plague, you needed that board from your opponent to actually generate a ton of 1/5 minions that just kind of get in the way. This card, you could just actually flood the board, tell your opponent to respond to this, and then potentially do it again. I do think this card is very good, but one of the reasons why I do think this card is very good is because of Splish Splash Whelp. 2 mana, 2/1 Battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, gain an empty mana crystal, and it is a dragon. Having a 2 mana, 2/1 Wild Growth is absolutely insane, and you can play this twice because it is a rare, and it's also a dragon for late game, because worst case scenario, you don't draw this in the early game and you don't get that ramp exactly on 2. You could just hold this in your hand and it's a dragon. It doesn't draw you a card like Breath of Dreams did, but I think just having the dragon tag on a Wild Growth is kind of insane. I'm really hoping Dragon Druid isn't just like this all-time best performer, but even in like the Highlander package, I think you're okay with this, because generally you're going to build like Dragon Highlander Druid. If you're building a Dragon Druid, you're going to put this every single time. It makes it so like you don't have to play Wild Growth and you can just draw Nourish every single time on turn 5. It fights for the board. This is like what Druid desperately wanted after like Rake got nerfed. I think this card is going to be the fundamental reason why Dragon Druid will be a meta tyrant. I am really hopeful that I'm probably 100% sure that Dragon Druid will be a good deck. I'm hopeful that it's not like going to be tier 1, but this will be one of the reasons. That's a pretty good card right there. Next, Tram Conductor Gary. 7 mana, 4/4 Battlecry. If you've excavated twice, summon 6 3/3 Tram cards with Rush. I am under the impression that Excavate Warlock will be the best deck in the format. I just think the best thing about it by far is the Azerite Snake, which is the 4 mana 5/5 Battlecry. Deal like just take 10 health from your opponent. That seems really, really good. And this card naturally fits into the deck, but not even that. This might be the most overloaded 7-drop I've ever seen in the game as well. Compare this to like Dr. Boom, man. We have gone pretty far. This is probably a board clear. It's a pretty good card. And if you're your opponent against Warlock and you're worried that you're gonna die to the Azerite Snake, but then they drop Gary, my man Gary over here, yeah, you're gonna be in for a rough time, dude. This is a good card. A lot of stats. I don't think it's really hard to tell. I think Excavate Warlock will just be a really, really good deck. And Gary is gonna be probably the highest cost card in the deck if you don't want Sargeras or something. Gary's good. Don't disenchant him if you get him. All right, this one's probably obvious. because I think Reno is going to be the fundamental reason why you play Highlander. Most of the Highlander cards, like the only one I was really unimpressed with was Hunter during theory crafting. I think Hunter's Highlander package is just really whack. Reno will single-handedly make decks want to play Highlander. This card reminds me a ton of Zephyrus. Zephyrus was a really good card. I think Zephyrus is still better than this, but at 8 mana, like it felt like if you played this on turn 8, you just kind of won the game. Your opponent can't really respond because then they can only play 1 minion. You could absolutely wipe boards. You could, well, that's what the card does. I was gonna say you could absolutely just demolish your opponent. Hopefully they just concede, but it's also like a really good value turn because now you get the arcane bullet, you get the frost bullet, you get all the bullets. Some of them are really good. Like you get additional draw on a Highlander deck, which is a pretty big deal. The nature bullet discovering a spell is kind of nuts. Even though this is completely random, the amount of value you'll end up getting over a long game is going to be pretty great. And if your opponent doesn't have lethality, I think Reno just kind of wins the game for you. Will they nerf this card? I'm not sure. I think Highlander won't be as good as it will be after rotation. Like I think it needs the 4 sets rather than the 6 sets, mainly because most of the Highlander cards other than the Reno didn't really feel like they were broken. I feel like the Paladin one was good, but you definitely want to draw it as early as possible. Like you want that extra card slot, like the Mirage in your hand. Druids is just great. Like if you're playing on turn 8, it's fine. You just get infinite dragons, which I think is insane. The Hunter one, again, like I said, the hand buff package just felt really weird. I just don't think that 4 mana guy is going to be insane. I can't even remember what the last couple are. There's the priest one. Like the fact I can't remember what they are concerns me. The Demon Hunter one was actually pretty sick though, the Kurtrus card. But again, it's all irrelevant. I think if you're going to play Highlander, you're playing it because of Reno, because Reno will actually be the true win condition of the deck. Every other card is there to support Reno. And it's funny because this is a neutral card. All right. Unironically, I do think Kingpin Pud and the rest of the Ogre Gang cards were surprisingly very, very good during theory crafting. And it's almost just like a big stat check from your opponent. Like 3 mana 4/4 is a pretty good stat line, and it has rush, right? 4 mana 3/6, potentially giving your hero +3 attack is actually not that bad. Ogre Gang Ace is also good, even though that is the 50/50. Sometimes just getting lifesteal is really great. Now, the problem with this is that the RNG aspect is there, but King Pud resurrecting them and getting the Wind Fury felt like a pretty powerful win condition, especially because I think the best card of the set by far will be Shadowstep. I mentioned it at the start of this video, but because of Shadowstep, I feel like there is going to be so much nonsense in Rogue. Kingpin Pud, Necrolord Draka making a big weapon and then getting her back, Wishing Well stuff. Like there's just infinite ways that Shadowstep is going to make Rogue an absolutely disgusting class. And if you think I'm joking, I'm not. I legitimately think even though this card is not from this expansion, this card will make Rogue a really, really good deck. Now, will it be better than Warlock? That'll be an interesting question because the Azurite Snake is kind of insane. But Shadowstep, best card of the set. Let me know what you guys think is the best card. I'm really curious to see what people think. Let me know if you're excited for this expansion. I'll see you guys in the next one.